A man runs through the dimly lit stone halls of Linlithgow Palace. His hurried footsteps echo off the walls as his chest heaves up and down. He approaches the door to the room in which the queen and her newborn infant daughter reside. The man pauses just outside the entrance to catch his breath. He opens the door and speaks. "Milady, the king is dead." The messenger pauses as he looks at the baby. "Your daughter is now Queen of Scotland." The baby lets out a cry as her reign begins. On a cold December day in 1542, King James V is laid to rest. Mary, Queen of Scots, becomes the ruler of her father's lands. Since she's only an infant, a number of other people make decisions for her until she is old enough to take over the throne. One of those people is her mother, Marie de Guise. She oversees her daughter's future and the future of Scotland. Marie de Guise sits around a table of advisors as the sun shines through the stained glass windows. "My lady," one of the regents starts, "word has traveled fast across the lands. Henry VIII now knows the death of your husband. He is going to come after your daughter one way or another." There are murmurs from the other advisors sitting around the table. They're all Catholic nobles, and the last thing they want is a Protestant like Henry VIII meddling in the affairs of Scotland. The advisor continues speaking. "We received word that many in the English court will not recognize the current king's children as heirs to the throne, since they're illegitimate in the eyes of the Catholic Church. It seems as if Henry's proclivity for the new wives has finally caught up with him." Marie de Guise nods as she ponders what this means for Scotland and the people of England. But the more pressing concern is what Henry VIII might do to her daughter. As Henry VII's great-granddaughter, Mary is the rightful heir to the English throne when Henry passes away. This is the last thing the Mad King wants for his line of succession. He killed so many wives just to ensure he would have his son to succeed him. Now, all of that seems to have been for nothing. "Henry VIII has shown his desperation in an unsurprising way," another advisor chimes in. "He has proposed that your daughter Mary and his son Edward should be wed. This would bring peace to our lands, but as everyone sitting around the table knows, the marriage is unacceptable. We will not allow a Protestant boy to sully the prestige of our new queen." Everyone agrees. Marie de Guise is silent for a moment. All eyes fall on her as she cradles the newborn queen in her arms. "We'll need allies if we're to make sure that Henry and his allies are kept in check. My daughter's destiny lies not in Scotland at the moment, but beyond our shores on the mainland." There's an unsettling silence among the advisors. They know that the mother of the queen is right, but it seems wrong to send the newborn away from her homeland at such a young age. Then again, it might be the only hope for Scotland to maintain control over their lands. Life is dangerous for a monarch, especially an infant monarch with an enemy as powerful as Henry VIII. It would only take a single cunning assassin a few moments to smother the new queen in her cradle. "My daughter will go to France, where she will be married to Francis II, heir to the French throne. This will provide her with protection from Henry and his supporters, while also strengthening the bond between our two countries," said Marie de Guise. "In order for Scotland to remain independent, we will need France's support in the years to come. The Protestant threat is growing even within our borders. We need to keep my daughter safe at all costs." The Council of Advisors agrees. Marie de Guise kisses her daughter on the forehead, stands up, and walks out of the room to make preparations for the journey ahead. For several years, Mary, Queen of Scots, is kept under close watch as she grows and the marriage to Francis is solidified. 5 years into her life, Mary, her mother, and several of her close friends step onto a creaky wooden ship and set sail for France. They safely dock on the other side of the channel, where the Scottish voyagers are greeted by French nobility. A year later, it's decided that Marie de Guise must return to Scotland to rule as regent for her daughter until she comes of age. It is a sad farewell. Tears stream down Marie's face as this could be the last time she ever sees her daughter. It is still not safe for the young queen in Scotland, nor is it safe for her mother. Marie de Guise is accompanied back to Scotland by her grandmother Antoinette de Bourbon and her uncle Francis, the second Duke of Guise, and Charles, a cardinal in the Catholic Church. This entourage is powerful enough to keep the Protestants at bay and Henry VIII from doing anything too rash. For the next 12 years, Mary is taught by the best teachers France has to offer. She's treated like one of the royal family even before her marriage to Francis II. Then the happy day finally comes. On April 24, 1558, Mary and Francis are married. The Scottish-French alliance has now been solidified, and it seems as if everyone can sigh a breath of relief. But 2 years into the marriage, a tragedy strikes. Mary, Queen of Scots, has enjoyed a relatively safe, carefree life in France, but that's all about to change. One of Mary's closest friends approaches her as she sits in the garden. "My lady, I have some terrible news." Her voice trembles. "Your husband." The friend can't complete her sentence. The words get stuck in her throat as she tries to choke back her tears. "What of Francis?" Mary asks frantically. "He's dead, my lady. The doctors treating his infection of the ear couldn't stop its spread. Something went terribly wrong." Mary stands up. Her gaze is far away. She picks up her long dress in both hands and sprints toward the palace where the body of her deceased husband lies. Mary is only 18 years old now, and now a widow. Her brother-in-law, Charles IX, takes over the French throne. There's nothing left for Mary in this country. It's decided Mary is to return home to Scotland. For the first time since she was a small child, Mary, Queen of Scots, will rule her homeland as queen. Mary doesn't remember much about the land where she was born and spent her entire childhood, but what she does remember has all changed. The country is now predominantly Protestant, and since she was raised in France as a Catholic, she has a hard time identifying with her people. However, most of the country still loves their queen, especially the eligible bachelors who seek to elevate their status by becoming her husband and joining the monarchy of Scotland. Mary finds companionship in not just a friend but a relative, her cousin Henry Stuart. Lord Darnley becomes too close to the queen. They spend time together traveling through the country, and it's decided that the two will wed. Mary, Queen of Scots, likes Henry Stuart, and the nobility also knows that the union of the two will strengthen the Stuart claim to the English throne. Plus, Henry is a Catholic. But there is a problem. Many of the Scottish nobles are now Protestant, and they are less than thrilled about the marriage between Mary and Henry. But they don't have to worry for long. Things quickly fall apart between the newlyweds. "Why do you let them push you around like that?" asks Mary. "I'm better than them. I don't need to argue my points. They should just listen to me. I am King of Scotland after all," Henry replies. "You are married to the Queen of Scotland, Henry. You are not king without me. Don't forget that." Mary says to her husband with fire in her eyes, "You are immature and arrogant. I believe I've made a mistake taking you as my husband. A mistake I unfortunately have to live with until one of us is no longer in this mortal realm." "I am immature?" Henry shouts. "What about you? I see the way you look at your secretary. What's his name again? David Rizzio? Don't forget, you're carrying my child. And even if you keep me out of important meetings and decisions, our kid will still be the heir to the throne. I am done listening to your accusations and whining. I am leaving." Mary, Queen of Scots, slams the door as she exits the room and pauses. Does he really know how I feel about David? She wonders. Mary runs down the hallway as quickly as she can. She's heavily pregnant, but she must warn David Rizzio that his life could be in danger. Mary searches everywhere but can't find her secretary. It's likely he's already gone home as it's late. Mary, Queen of Scots, retires to her bedchamber while her husband broods and plots in his room by candlelight. Several days later, Mary is sitting in a gallery discussing matters of the country with David Rizzio. Sun pours through the windows, lighting the room in a warm glow. The doors to the gallery burst open. Armed soldiers rush in and seize David Rizzio. Mary watches in horror as one after another plunges their knives into her secretary. The lifeless body is thrown to the floor. Blood pools at Mary's feet. She turns to face the entryway. Standing there with a smile creasing his lips is her husband. It's June 19, 1566. The screams of Mary, Queen of Scots, fills the halls of Edinburgh Castle. Screaming suddenly stops. A baby begins to cry as the Queen's newborn son, James VI, is welcomed into this world. Mary's husband has lost his mind and claims that the baby boy is not his. It is clear that Darnley is no longer a suitable husband, and he certainly is not the father James deserves. Mary finds herself in a terrible position. She needs to get away from Darnley, but she can't divorce the man without jeopardizing her son's legitimacy as heir to the throne. However, there might be another way out of the situation. If Darnley were to die somehow, Mary could move on and her son would not have to worry about his future role as King of Scotland. It's a dark thought, but Mary knows something must be done. There's no definitive connection between Mary, Queen of Scots, and what happens next, but all of her problems are about to be solved in a very convenient way. Henry Darnley starts to feel ill. The doctors in Edinburgh don't seem to be able to help. He decides to go to Kirklefield to seek aid from the monks there and recover from whatever's ailing him. Mary decides not to accompany her husband as she has no desire to spend more time with him than she absolutely has to. Henry lies motionless in his bed at Kirklefield. He stares out the window at the rolling fields that lay just beyond the church. It's beautiful. Unknown to Darnley, a man has entered the church. In the basement is a store of gunpowder, enough to consume the entire church in a fiery explosion. The anonymous man lights a fuse and rushes out of the building. Henry's feeling better, so he summons his servant. "Let's go for a walk," he says. The servant nods and grabs Henry's coat. The fuse continues to burn closer and closer to the gunpowder. The servant opens the door and Henry steps outside. It's brisk but pleasant. They begin to stroll through the church grounds, climbing to the top of one of the hills overlooking the fields. It's quiet and still. There's only a slight breeze. The burning fuse reaches the barrels. They ignite. The explosion shakes the earth. The church erupts like a volcano behind them. Henry and his servant fall to the ground. The intense heat from the fire warms their backs. Henry sits up and looks back at Kirklefield. From the fire, a shape emerges. It's the silhouette of a man. In his hands is a wire. When investigators arrive at the scene, they find the church in a pile of smoldering rubble. However, there is no sign of Henry Stuart. They search the guards surrounding the church and find something shocking. Laying in one of the fields is the former king and his servant. Both have been strangled to death. It's no secret that Mary and Henry had not been getting along. When she is told of her husband's death, she does not seem very distraught, nor does she seem all that surprised. Enemies of the Queen accuse her of conspiring with one of her closest advisors, James Hepburn, of murdering her husband so that she could get out of the loveless marriage. The death of her first husband, Francis II, was an accident. The death of her second husband, Henry Stuart, was not. In a move that shocks the nation and the nobles of Scotland, Mary, Queen of Scots, weds James Hepburn in May of 1567, only 3 months after the murder of her former husband. Since the previous lovers were dead, the Catholic Church has no argument against the Queen remarrying a third time. However, who she marries does seem suspicious. It seems as if the world is falling apart around Mary. The elites of the country continuously scheme to have her removed from the throne. Many of her loyal subjects now question her ethics, as it appears the Queen had some sort of role in the death of her previous husband. And even though things seem like they can't get any worse, they do. Mary later finds out that James Hepburn is still married to another woman. He told Mary, Queen of Scots, that he'd been previously married but was recently divorced, when in fact he had never gone through with the proceedings. In order to save face, Mary has to act quickly. She concocts a story that James Hepburn abducted her and forced her to marry him. In reality, there is no evidence to support the claim. Back-to-back scandals are never good for a queen, and the Scottish nobles take advantage of this. However, this time, it's not just the Protestants who are trying to remove Mary from the throne, but the Catholics as well. It seems as if everyone is turned against the young queen. In June of 1567, Mary and James Hepburn are confronted by nobles atop Carbery Hill. "It's over," says the leader. "This cannot go on any longer. England is laughing at us. The world is laughing at us. It's time to answer for what you've done, Hepburn." "No," screams Mary. "I will come willingly and do whatever you say. Just let James go free." There's a quiet discussion amongst the nobles. "Very well," the leader says. "You will come with us to Lochleven Castle, where you will remain under close guard. Your time as Queen of Scotland is now at its end. As for your husband," the leader of the nobles says with disgust, "he is to be exiled from our lands forever." Mary looks at James. They have no choice. She hugs her husband and walks slowly toward the soldiers and nobles. James Hepburn watches as his wife is led down Carbery Hill. He notices a few soldiers lingering, and in fear for his life, James Hepburn flees the country, never to see his wife or homeland again. Mary sits in Lochleven Castle, staring out the single window in her small room. The summer of 1567 is a hot one. Sweat trickles down the side of her face. She's been forced to abdicate her throne, leaving her infant son as the new King of Scotland. The nobles are now in charge of the country, as it will still be many years before James VI is old enough to rule. And by that point, the nobles who deposed Mary, Queen of Scots, will have shaped the country into what they wanted all along. Mary looks at her stomach and rubs it gently. She'd been pregnant with twins, but there was a miscarriage. Now she sits all alone in her cell with only her thoughts and the sounds of summer birds chirping outside her window to soothe her. A voice suddenly speaks out from the other side of the door. "My queen, plans have been set in motion. We're going to break you out of this place." The voice belongs to George Douglas, the brother of Sir William Douglas, who's in charge of Lochleven Castle and one of the nobles that was in favor of deposing the queen. George, on the other hand, is a staunch supporter of Mary, Queen of Scots, and is helping to orchestrate her escape. George Douglas opens the door and walks into Mary's room with one of the women who's in charge of the laundry at the castle. "This brave woman has agreed to help us," George says, signaling to the laundress standing next to him. She removes her dress and hands it to Mary. The former queen puts on the dress and grabs an armful of dirty clothing. George and Mary exit the castle and close the door behind them. They hurry down the hallways of the castle. Mary holds up a pile of dirty laundry in front of her face to conceal her identity. They pass several guards who pay them no mind. Mary and George exit the castle. They walk quickly to the boat that will carry them back to shore. The only people at the castle who knew of the plot to save the queen were George and the laundress. When Mary steps on the boat, she stumbles. The captain reaches out and grabs her hand to steady her. He can't help but notice that the laundress's hands are delicate and very white. Something seems off. The captain pulls the laundry away from Mary's face and immediately recognizes the former queen. He yells for help. Guards from the castle run toward the boat. They arrest both Mary and George. Mary is brought back to her room and locked inside. George must answer to his brother. But blood is stronger than any mistake, and Sir William Douglas forgives his younger sibling. However, Mary is now under even closer observation. She will never escape the confines of Lochleven Castle, or so she thinks. Even though George was caught trying to free Mary the first time, he's not given up. He reaches out to his cousin Willie Douglas, who was the actual mastermind behind the plot to break Mary out. In the next escape attempt, Willie will play a major role himself. Almost a year after being imprisoned in Lochleven Castle, Mary lays in bed. There's a jingle of keys at her door. Mary hears the clang of metal on metal as a key is inserted into the lock. The bolt slides back. The door opens. Standing in the entryway is Willie Douglas. He's gotten Sir William Douglas drunk, and when he passed out, Willie stole the key and ran to Mary's room. "We need to go before Sir William wakes up," Willie says. reaching out his hand to Mary. They sprint through the corridors of the castle, sneak out one of the back doors, and board a boat waiting for them. This time, the captain is aware of the escape plan, and Mary has no trouble returning to the mainland. Waiting for her at the shore is George Douglas. Willie and Mary get off the boat. They're brought to a gathering of over 6,000 people who will fight to put Mary, Queen of Scots, back on the throne. Mary is touched by the support. She gets to work immediately with other nobles and advisors to lay out a plan to take back what is rightfully hers. The Catholic forces march toward Edinburgh. They meet a Protestant army led by James Stuart, 1st Earl of Moray at Langside, on May 13, 1568. This will be the battle to decide the fate of Scotland. Mary watches as the order is given to charge. The Catholics let out a battle cry as they run toward the Protestant forces. Swords clash, shields are broken, arrows fly. Both Catholic and Protestant blood spills onto the battlefield. After an hour of fighting, the Protestant forces have decimated the Catholics. After the battle, Mary, Queen of Scots, finds she has lost almost all of her soldiers. She now has not only escaped prison but committed treason against the current rulers of Scotland. Mary will not be allowed to remain in her homeland without facing execution, so she flees. Mary had been in communication with her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, in England for some time now. They've never met, but the two queens exchange correspondence from time to time and feel a sort of connection. Mary decides her only option is to flee to England and beg Elizabeth to keep her safe from the Scottish nobles. When Mary reaches England and finally gains an audience with Elizabeth, things do not turn out according to plan. "What do you mean I'm under arrest?" Mary asks. Queen Elizabeth looks down from her seat of power. "Would you really have me believe that you came all the way to England with no intention of taking the throne from me? When you were born, my father tried to broker peace between our peoples. Yet you were sent to France and left your own people and the people of England without a diplomatic means to unite. Now you believe I should protect you when you've caused so much chaos in our lands." Mary stands tall, but in the back of her mind she fears the worst. "What are you to do with me then?" Mary asks. Elizabeth decides to place Mary under arrest and keep her confined and out of public eye. Mary can't believe she's a prisoner once again. Her early life in France had not prepared her for the hardships of ruling a religiously divided country, and her trust in another monarch has clearly been misplaced. But the fact that Mary is a Catholic with a claim to the English throne means that she has supporters no matter where she goes. England has been torn apart by the schism between Protestants and Catholics for many years, and the fact that Henry VIII converted to Protestantism just so he could divorce his wives has left a sour taste in the mouths of many of the Catholic nobility. They want nothing more than to see a Catholic monarch back in power in England, and Mary has a strong claim to the English throne. Mary has been imprisoned in England for a few years when a plot to overthrow her cousin in 1571 is uncovered. Catholic monarchs around Europe see the Protestant queen as a threat. King Philip II of Spain and the Pope conspire with several English nobles to overthrow Queen Elizabeth and put Mary in her place. On a dark English night, a messenger employed by Roberto Ridolfi, a Florentine banker, is arrested. He has a secret communication between the co-conspirators. The communications contained information and plans on how the Catholics could remove Elizabeth from the throne. However, no direct evidence is uncovered that indicates Mary had any involvement in what comes to be known as the Ridolfi plot. However, many are executed by the monarch of England to prove a point. Any attempt to put Mary on the throne will result in death. In the years to come, the Catholics will try several more times to overthrow Queen Elizabeth, but with no success. Each plot that's uncovered is scrutinized by the monarchy, but Mary's involvement is never definitively proven in any of them. Elizabeth is frustrated that the Catholics are so adamant about taking what's rightfully hers. She knows that as long as Mary lives, her seat of power will be threatened. At the same time, she cannot justify executing Mary without cause, or the Catholics in the country will revolt and start a war. The English monarchy and Parliament decides to take a different approach to remove the threat that Mary poses to England. The Privy Council passes the Bond of Association in 1584, and Parliament passes the Act for the Queen's safety the following year. Both are meant to deter the Catholics from trying to assassinate Queen Elizabeth by making it impossible for Mary to claim the English throne if her cousin is eliminated. This does not seem to deter the Catholics. It's now 1586, and tensions between the Catholics and Protestants in England are higher than ever. The Babington plot is uncovered. A man disguised as a servant enters the house where Mary is being held captive. She's been stuck here for almost 2 decades and has decided it's finally time to make a move against her cousin. "My lady," the mysterious man says, "I have another message from Lord Babington. You'll have to decode it like the previous ones." Mary nods. She unscrambles the message. "I have 6 gentlemen who can assassinate Queen Elizabeth with your approval." The words echo through Mary's mind. She can no longer tolerate being a prisoner. She takes out her quill and responds to the letter. "I would like to meet with these men and determine who has the skills needed to complete the task," Mary writes back. The disguised messenger leaves the residence and heads back to his horse. As he puts a foot in the rain, the officers burst out of the alley. They grab the messenger from atop his horse and throw him to the ground. His bags are searched and the coded messages are found. In a matter of days, the English authorities break the code and show Queen Elizabeth what they've uncovered. The Queen is troubled but can't help but smile slightly. She finally has what she needs to rid herself of Mary, Queen of Scots, once and for all. Mary stands tall and defiant as her trial commences. "This woman is not my sovereign," Mary says, pointing at Elizabeth. "Any charges against me are false and likely a ploy so that Elizabeth can kill me and quiet the Catholics of this great land." Mary's words fall on deaf ears as she's convicted of treason and sentenced to death. Mary enters the execution chamber. The date is the 8th of February, 1587. A crowd has gathered to watch the former Queen of Scotland beheaded. Mary's dressed all in black and wears a black veil covering her face. She's defiant to the end as she shows no sign of fear or weakness. She's been a captive for almost 20 years, both in her own country and in England. Mary slowly walks toward the block where the executioner waits with the blade of his sharpened axe resting on the floor. She locks eyes with Elizabeth and she stops. After a moment's pause, Mary falls to her knees and places her head on the block. Mary, Queen of Scots, turns to face the executioner. "I hope you shall make an end of all my troubles," she says with a smile. "Kill her," Elizabeth yells. The executioner raises his axe in the air and brings it down, but he's been thrown off by Mary's words of defiance. He misses his mark. The blade impales itself in the back of Mary's skull. The executioner wiggles the axe back and forth to dislodge it. Mary is still alive. The blade comes out of her skull with a pop. The executioner instantly brings the axe down again, but in his haste he does not get a full swing in, and the neck is only partially severed. The crowd gasps in horror as blood sprays everywhere, and the gruesome scene continues. The executioner brings down the axe a third time. The blade goes all the way through Mary's neck, and her head falls to the ground. The room is completely silent. Queen Elizabeth looks on, eyes wide, as people in the crowd begin to retch. The executioner looks uneasy. He bends over and picks up the severed head of Mary, Queen of Scots. He holds it by the hair and shouts, "God save Queen Elizabeth. May all the enemies of the true evangel thus perish." Now watch, Most Evil Queen killed 75% of her subjects. Or check out Bloody Mary, Mary the First of England.